This is the documentary of Apple and Microsoft in the 1990s by Daniel. Just if you forgot, Apple was famous for the simple devices like the iPad, the iPod, and the iPhone. And Microsoft is known for Windows, a revolutionary operating system. Right off the bat, Apple was struck with a new decade and PCs were everywhere. Michael Spindler said it was too late. Soon, Apple released the first generation of PowerBooks. The PowerBook was the line of laptop PCs by Apple Computer. All three PowerBooks were a hit. The first generation of PowerBooks included PowerBook 100, PowerBook 140, and PowerBook 170. The PowerBooks were the first Macs to be based off the PowerPC chip. The Power Macs helped Apple compete against Apple's newest rivals, Intel's processor. Many companies were selling PCs, but only Apple was selling Macs, and that was a huge problem for Apple. Apple knew they were in trouble. Apple decided, hey, why don't we license the Mac OS? Apple brought it to Michael Spindler's attention. Apple was also working on a new type of computer, the PDA, which stands for Personal Digital Assistant. The PDA was named Newton by Apple. John Sculley, the CEO of Apple, eventually lost his position, and Spindler took over in his place. Sculley resigned shortly after being Apple's chairman for some months. This here is a picture of Steve Jobs and John Sculley side by side. Spindler decided to license the Mac OS to many companies. Only a few companies actually licensed the Mac OS. Apple was good at selling computers, but they struggled with building them. Apple ran into a problem where they didn't have enough parts to build any computers, and Microsoft worsened the blow when they released Windows 95. Soon, Spindler resigned as CEO, and Gil Amelio took his place. In December 1996, Apple announced that Steve Jobs would return to the company and that they would be acquiring Next. In 1997, Gil Amelio resigned from Apple because he lost millions of dollars. Fred Anderson, who was Apple's CFO, was put in charge. Jobs decided to cancel Next's spinoff and was beginning to be called the interim CEO. He also introduced a new board of directors. Steve Jobs made an alliance with Microsoft. Microsoft announced that Windows 98 would be available for the Apple's Mac by the end of the year. Quickly, the Power Mac G3 and the PowerBook G3 were announced. The Apple Store did fairly well and was the third largest e-commerce site on the World Wide Web in a week. Jobs decided to move the Apple OS in a new direction. Mac OS X would merge OS 8 and Rhapsody. In 1998, Steve Jobs announced the iBook, while the Power Mac G4 followed. By the end of the decade, Apple's stock had risen, and by September of 1999, Apple was trading at an all-time high. In May 1990, Microsoft launched Windows 3.0. Microsoft decided, since they were getting more money for Windows than their OS2, that they would focus more on Windows. Soon, Bill Gates, co-founder of Microsoft, announced that their OS2 partnership was over. In 1991, Microsoft Research was founded, an organization for researching computer science subjects. Microsoft in 1992 was still going really strong thanks to the success of Microsoft Office. The same year, Microsoft introduced and released Windows 3.1. In November of the same year, Microsoft released the first version of Microsoft Access. By 1993, Windows had become the most used GUI system on the planet. That same year, the 5-year copyright infringement case ended in Microsoft's favor. Microsoft soon released an encyclopedia for the computers called Microsoft Encarta. In 1995, Microsoft released Windows 95. More than 1 million copies of Windows 95 were sold in 4 days. Windows 95 did not come with an internet browser because Microsoft did not develop one in time. Microsoft decided to license a browser thanks to Spyglass and named it Internet Explorer. Microsoft went on to broaden its product line into the World Wide Web. Microsoft and NBC joined together to make a 24-hour cable television network called MSNBC. Microsoft soon acquired Web TV, which allowed people to go on to the web using their TVs. Windows NT 4.0 followed. 1997 saw the release of Microsoft Office 97 Internet Explorer 4.0. By then, Internet Explorer was bundled with Apple's Macintosh operating system and Windows. 1998 came around and Bill Gates appointed Steve Ballmer as the new president of Microsoft. Released Windows 98, which came with Internet Explorer 4.0 SP1. And after some controversy with the Halloween documents, Microsoft's decade ended.